Welcome back. Testimony resumes right now, as you see there. And let me bring in Lisa Bloom and John Burris again. And Lisa, I want to get some more perspective here on the questions to this chief medical examiner under cross as far as how these injuries were sustained, or how these injuries happened, I should say. In particular, where she believes it's one strike against the concrete. She refers to them as minor and insignificant injuries as well.
Well, they're minor injuries in that they required only Band-Aids. That was the sum total of the medical treatment. Zimmerman was not hospitalized. He refused any further medical treatment. So I think everybody would have to concede ultimately that they were minor. We also saw the video, and she referred to this in her testimony, of him at the police station that night, walking and speaking with the police in a normal seeming way. But that doesn't resolve the question legally, though, because you could have no injuries whatsoever and still prevail on a self-defense claim. If the jury believes that he was reasonably in fear of imminent either death or great bodily harm, they can acquit him. But the defense has made so much of these injuries, showing the photos over and over again to the jury, so of course the prosecution needs to minimize it.
Right, and that's because, Lisa and John, you need to have credibility to the fact that you believe your life is in danger. John, our minds logically would say to us, well, yes, one punch may not feel good, but does that mean my life is in danger? And to propel their argument, the defense, they've had to explain these injuries as leading up to George Zimmerman believing his life was in danger, rather than him believing he was just being beaten up, which is a difference.
That's important because he does pull out a deadly weapon.
Yes.
And so you have to have a basis to believe that. You can't just be in a fight and all of a sudden pull out a gun. His argument is that not only was I getting beat up, but he went for my gun too. And so from that point of view, he really thinking his life is in danger, and then that's the argument they're going to make, and the prosecution has to minimize those injuries and to suggest that a reasonable person would not have believed that their life is in danger unless they had a state of mind that will or aggressive and was already determined to believe this person was a criminal, and so therefore you juxtapose these opinions upon that person, and that heightened your interest in believing your life was in danger.
And Lisa, the photographs, and we know these photographs were made public well before this trial, they've been talked so much about, particularly with George Zimmerman, because of the stream of blood, and many people thought, well, look at that. That is proof that he was attacked. But hearing this chief medical examiner say, yes, you might see a lot of blood there, but that doesn't mean that this is a severe injury. It is intriguing because we know, again, when these pictures were initially released or leaked out, the Zimmerman attorneys really heavily pushed that, look at this. This is blood streaming from his head. This is how badly he was being beaten up.
That's right, Tamron. And this medical examiner has said something that I think comports with all of our common sense. You can get a very small cut and it could bleed a lot. And if the blood is dripping down and you're photographed with a couple of streams of blood dripping down, it looks much more serious than it really is once you wipe that away and you see it's just a tiny cut, 2 centimeters, a half a centimeter. That's what we're talking about in this case.
And that, John, applies to the injury of the nose as well. The first picture where it's clearly inflamed, to the second picture that the chief medical examiner looked at, where she said, listen, the swelling had gone down because it wasn't significant.
Well, I think that's true, but you get slugged in the nose could be disorienting to a person, and as well as having your head bumped against the cement. It doesn't have to be that hard. All you got to think about is if you hit your head trying to get in a car, which I have done on more than one occasion, it could cause you to be disoriented. So he does have that as arguments that will be made, but
that's why the chief medical examiner points out that she watched video of him walking alongside the officer, in her words, walking in pace with the officers, showing that he was not incapacitated in any way.
Absolutely, and that has been the visual that we've all seen from the very beginning. He never looked like a person who had been beaten up. He never walked like one. He never talked like one, and he certainly didn't display that kind of outrageousness or even her injuries that you would think that a person who had been in a fight for their lives, and that's a visual that the jurors are going to see time and time again.
All right, let's listen back to the testimony happening with Dr. Rao under cross.
Impact could give you that.
And could that have been a different impact?
It's possible, yes.
It is possible,
it's consistent,
correct?
Yes.
Matter of fact, how much of a distance do you think there are between those 2 points of impact?
Well, I think it's not just the distance, but also one has to look at the curvature of the head when you are, and when I'm giving you an opinion, I'm not only looking at the distance between the two contusions, but I'm also looking at the contour of the head.
That's what I was curious about, so let's talk about that. The contour of the head is somewhat sphere-like, is it not?
Oval, yes.
Oval. So if you have 2 points on a sphere or an oval, correct?
Correct?
It's convex, is it not, the skull?
Yes.
So if you have 2 points 2 inches apart, why is there not a continuous bruise or a scarring all the way across? Why would you have 2 separate ones?
Okay, so it's not scarring. Scarring is a different terminology.
I apologize for the misuse of the term. Why is it not one long, if it came from one contact, why is there not one long injury?
Okay, because the force applied to one area because contour may not be the force in the other area, and so in one site the force may be sufficient to cause a contusion, but it's not. We're not like computers. It's not. You do something and you expect this result. We are dealing with a different configuration of the head, so I don't think that follows. It's a nice thing to be able to say, but I can't say that.
Certainly it could have been 2 separate injuries, correct?
It's possible, yes.
Okay. And looking at States 69, I want you to pay some attention to what seems to be a view of the Mr. Zimmerman's skull, correct?
Scalp, yes.
Scalp. That's right. His skull will be underneath, right?
Correct.
And I want you to pay attention to the top of the picture and see if you can tell us what you believe that protrusion to be. My term, not yours.
Okay, so on the other side, we are actually looking at a photograph of the left side of the head and the top of the head, and we actually are getting a view on the right side of that bruise that we talked about. So that's the same bruise.
Do you see the swelling is my question?
Yes.
Okay. So there's swelling, and you're suggesting, I would like you to be clear about this for the jury's consideration, that in exhibit number 69, you do acknowledge swelling that seems to be to the right side of the midline of the scalp, correct?
Correct, but you got the bruise, which, if you want to say, well, this is a swelling, but there is no bruising there, and if the swelling was so severe that you are looking at on the left side, then we would have a significant bruise, and we don't see that. Whereas there, it's a small bruise, but you can see the swelling. So you can't separate one from the other. So it's together.
Look at number 70, which we've talked about already, and tell the jury which bruise you believe that swelling is connected to.
I think it's that one. Because
I just want to be clear, you're thinking to the one that is behind the ear. You pointed to the one that is 2 inches or so behind the line of the ear.
I think because that's such a distorted photograph that because we are able to see very well the right side. So why are we looking at a photograph of the left side and trying to draw that conclusion? I think that's extremely unscientific.
And I apologize for that, but I just want to be clear about one thing. It is your testimony here today that the swelling that's on the 69 on the right side of the midline of the scalp, that is the bruising that is the same bruising as exists with what you've identified now as the bruising behind the ear on States 70, correct?
It could be. But like I said, it's very difficult for me to, to give an opinion on the photograph, which is so distorted.
Got it. Could it be a completely separate bruise?
Which one?
This one, the one on 69.
Well, if it was, why are we not able to see it from the right side?
Let's take a look at 71 then, and see what you see on that photograph.
Okay, so this is again the punctate abrasions that I talked about, and that is the bruise that we have to overlap. I think that's the
and let me show you just at the very top of the crown of the head there, almost out of the top of the picture. Is that not the bruise that we see, or the swelling that we see on 69?
I find it difficult when half the photograph is cut to give an opinion. I would like to see what the injury is before I tell you that that's the injury. So why are we looking at distortion and half photographs when we have the full side to be able to look at and to render an opinion?
Well, I certainly only want to do and have you give us as good an opinion as you can. Do you have a photograph that better shows the injuries that we've now seen by looking at 69, which shows the swelling that seems apparent?
No, I have the same, but I have just copies.
Okay, but that doesn't show the swelling, does it?
They're the same photographs, so how can they not show? Okay, so they are the same photographs, so how can it be different?
I'm asking you, as you're here today, to tell me what picture you have of the right side of his scalp that shows or doesn't show the swelling that was apparent in State's Exhibit 69.
Okay, so I have the same photographs you have, except mine is, like I said, copies. So this is the photograph that you are describing?
I'm trying to find the one that's in evidence for that. If I might have a moment, you want to? Let me ask you to compare, if you would, the picture that you were just showing with State's Exhibit, this one we identified, 70. Do you have that one?
I'm looking.
This is the chief medical examiner reviewing several photographs of George Zimmerman's injuries. This has been a fascinating cross-examination for many reasons. Most, though, this particular chief medical examiner has really gone toe-to-toe with Mark Amar in his cross-examination. We've seen this strategy throughout the several days where he really presses one of these witnesses called by the prosecution in an attempt to fluster them. She's maintained her view of how these injuries were sustained with George Zimmerman, and even challenged why she was receiving what she said were distorted photographs of the injuries and not show the entire face. So it's been very intriguing. We're going to continue to follow the coverage. This is News Nation. I'm Tamron Hall, and the cycle is up next.